You are listening to The Fortress. Welcome back to The Fortress, everybody. We're going to jump right in, and I just wanted to start out the show tonight by talking about the perfect story. Now, most of you know by now, most of you out there know by now that I'm a writer, a storyteller. And in order to become a storyteller, I think you have to be fairly familiar with how other people tell stories. I've always been a big fan of stories told in all sorts of ways. Plays, movies, video games, books, of course. And I think every author of a story is trying their best to write that perfect story. It's like the ultimate objective. All the stories that seem to entertain us the most are the ones that do such a good job telling us that story and answering the biggest questions in the most ways that connect with us. But here's the catch, at least I think. I don't think any of us out there are capable of writing the perfect story, because that is a task only achievable by God. And He's already done it. Think about it. If it's the perfect story, it can only be told for the first time once, be totally original, and have all the answers to all the reader's questions. However, since I believe the only perfect story ever written is the Bible, plus its sequel, history, or His story, I don't think the story's finished. Well, of course, the story's not finished. But the good Lord above has begun a work with all of us, every single one of us, and it will not be finished until it ends the way He said it would. Right there in the book of Revelation. I honestly think that's why I am such a believer. Because I've always been so drawn to stories, and His story, the story of Jesus and the story of God Himself in the Bible, answers every major question you should ask. Although it might not be the answer we want to hear. And the Bible has every aspect that makes up good stories. Action, drama, the unbelievable, awe-inspiring, love, violence, sex, reality, and most importantly, truth. Who is God? Bible answers that. Why are we here? The Bible answers that question. Where did we come from? Bible actually answers this. What's the meaning of life? See the Bible. Why is pain and suffering in this world? What's love? Why do bad things happen to good people? Now, I know none of y'all have heard that. How do we overcome life's biggest obstacles? Who did it? Who done it? Who? What? When? Where? Why? How? No story in the history of the world has answered all these questions the way the Bible does, in a way that doesn't just give humans some self-serving answer. The Bible does this and glorifies God. Although eternal life with Him is promised, there's no self-serving prize at the end like 72 virgins or the perfect golden palace or getting to live as a higher being because you were good while you were here, or any of that mumbo-jumbo. No, the Bible is ultimately Jesus' story of humility, but then power. The power of God. Not the power of man, the power of God. So the perfect story, even if we know how it ends, because the best lesson of it all is that the joy in the writing of the story is not even knowing yourself all the things you will experience along the way. The best part is that we are all characters in a grand story made up of so many plots and subplots that the human mind cannot begin to understand it all. Yet the author, God, makes this story different from any other story. He gives his characters the ability to choose which ending they want to be a part of. How awesome is that? What's crazy is there are so many people blinded by pride, selfishness, sin, corruption, brainwashing. They refuse to be part of the good ending. And yet Jesus tells us he is the answer. So here's the deal. If you don't believe me, at least start reading the story from the beginning. Give the story a chance. Apply things you learn in the Bible to your life. Think about this. It was written, over a period of thousands of years, and yet it still applies to every facet of life we have today. Apply it to the pain and suffering in the world. Try to see it from more than just one person's point of view, more than just your point of view. Especially from the point of view that we are not the author of the story. Don't be so skeptical just because the rest of the world tells you to. Just because somebody out there tells you that there was no divine inspiration, or they don't believe that divine inspiration guided the council at Nicaea or anything like that as far as the formation of the Bible itself. Don't be so skeptical. I dare you. If you do that and give the story a chance, just like you may have picked up a book, gotten frustrated or bored with it for a little bit, but then you picked it back up later and you ended up loving it, then maybe you'll experience the story the same way I have in my life. I'm going to continue to write stories. I'm going to continue to strive to write my perfect stories, just as we Christians continue to strive to live a Christ-like life, even though we know we will continually fall short until he comes back. But I'm excited as I write each story that I do, because I don't know what all will happen along the way. Yet I'm going to try to get excited about living life day to day and play my own part of this ever-going perfect story that God started in the beginning. So if I tell you I'm going to do that, I invite others to join me. So, won't you join me in this little story writing event called Life? That's how I'm going to start out the show today, guys. I just think storytelling, like Jeremy said last week, is a powerful, powerful tool. And if we base our life on the perfect story told to us through God, through the Bible, and through what we see and what we do for him, we are actually part of that perfect story. And the coolest part is it's a choose-your-own-adventure. Going to go to a little break now, but I hope you enjoyed that. We'll come back, and perhaps I'll tell you a little story of my own, a story that I wrote. Maybe some action will be in it. We'll see. We'll find out when you get back.
Shut up and sit down.
An Egyptian holy man for the religion of Islam is assassinated, and the killer leaves a gold cross as his calling card. The same Christian assassin kills on U.S. soil, and it is now up to the FBI and Interpol to bring him to justice. FBI agents John Knox and Beth White team up with Interpol Inspector Malik Sharif, but they are at a loss when the assassin leaves no trace of evidence at crime scenes. Meanwhile, the assassin is starting his own personal war with Muslims, and the government he works for becomes suspicious. Can a Christian FBI agent and a Muslim Interpol officer put aside their differences and perhaps even use them to track down the assassin? Can Agent White battle her spiritual demons? Can the agents find the killer before the media turns the case into an international religious circus? Join the investigators on a journey that will remind you of the latest assassin-style video game and your latest crime novel. But before it's all over, ask yourself, is the assassin any different than you or me? Or is he just misguided? Welcome back. You're listening to the next segment of The Fortress. Now, as I said earlier, tonight we're going to be doing some storytelling. I'm going to read a little segment of my first novel, Misguided. Now, it's going to give you a little insight into the main character. He's kind of an anti-hero, and of course he ends up getting known by the media as the Jesus Assassin. But as I read this, I want you to try to look at things from his point of view. This is just a little segment. It doesn't give away the whole story, but it does give you a good idea of what it's about. And, you know, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. That's the old quoting of the famous verse regarding revenge. You know, we are not supposed to take revenge out on people that wrong us. Well, that's why I titled my book the way I did. Because I'm not condoning my character's main actions, but at the same time, the human nature in all of us, I venture to guess, would make us all want to react in a similar fashion. So just hear me out for just a second. He closed his journal and locked it back in its secret hideaway. He rubbed his eyes and got up and headed over to his glass shelves. He reached up and grabbed the picture frame on the top shelf. He brought it down to eye level and gently touched the two faces in the photograph. The figure in the photo on the left was a beautiful, blonde-haired, blue-eyed California girl he had met when he was a young sailor. The cute, red-headed, green-eyed girl on the other side was none other than his daughter. They had been his little ladies. They had been his ultimate blessing from God. The work he did now would mean he would get to see them again, just as Job received blessed loved ones after his suffering. It had been 1 year and 3 days since they were taken from him. The classified video that he and his counter-terrorist team had uncovered played over and over in his head. The graphic images of both the people he loved most in this world, captured in low-quality, low-budget video made for YouTube, showed their lives taken from them in a most gruesome, horrifying manner. The video started with the executioner, wearing the typical cowardly keffiyeh wrapped around the head, nose, and mouth to aid in hiding their true identity, who spoke in clear but heavily accented English. "You Americans think you can kill who you want? You think you can come into our lands and murder our women and children with your missiles? Here are a woman and a child. We came and took them from one of your capitalist spies. We will now show you who it is okay to kill, if it is in the name of Allah." Then the camera zoomed out and showed his two girls, sitting in chairs with their legs tied together and their arms tied behind their backs. His two little ladies let out shrill screams. The terrorists hadn't even blindfolded them. The terrorist executioner stood between the two female victims, raised two large scimitars over his head, and no, he shook his head and tried to block out the image. Even though the horrible scene of violence is what kept him focused on his mission, it was too much for even the likes of him, a former SEAL, a top-level field agent, a government hitman, to be able to take. A new force to fight against evil was born that day. That force, 1 year later, would begin a quest of redemption, not only for the father and husband of a beautiful family, but the redemption for all Christians that would soon come, that had been prophesied by John of Patmos millennia before. Now that's just one of the opening scenes. It's not really the opening scene, but it's shortly after an important scene in the beginning of Misguided. I'm kind of hoping you can see where the assassin would struggle. Where if someone took who was closest to you, how would you act? How would you react? How would you feel? The dark world we live in kind of gives you that answer, doesn't it? Because of our human nature. Think about the police officers out there and that brotherhood, that camaraderie they have. And they have to go out there and face people who deliberately break laws, who deliberately put others in danger, and who deliberately go out in the intention to kill somebody else. And think about how one of them feels, or how they feel when one of them is gunned down on the street. Now, you can look at that from the other perspective too. Think about people from the streets, whether black or white. But think about how they would feel especially if it is one of those rare occasions where a police officer goes outside his training, goes outside what he's supposed to do, and ends up firing away and shooting a criminal and killing him in the street. How are the I guess, fellow criminals or other people that associated with that person, how do you think they feel? These are some things I just wanted people to ponder over tonight. So think over that as you will, and we will go over some more things, not relating to vengeance, but more fear when we come back. Russian mobsters are dying in a federal prison, and at first it looks like it may be a case of racism and hate. But agents John Knox and Malik Sharif realize they are dealing with one elusive killer, and things are turning out to be much more than they seem. Between Malik's encounter with his dad for the first time in years, and John Knox's discoveries involving the possibility of capturing the same man who killed his former partner, the agents have more than they bargained for. Why is the killer targeting Russian mobsters? Will Malik find the spiritual awakening which it seems Knox and Malik's dad have experienced? Is there something more sinister and far deeper behind the death in the prison? Follow the two agents and meet several new characters in this second installment in the Knox Mission series as they discover murder, racism, hate, conspiracy, and even hope through it all. But just when everyone seems to think they have it all figured out, you'll see they are all mistaken. Fear. What are you afraid of? What scares you? Think about all the things that frighten you. Where do you turn when you meet those things? Where do you turn when you are about to have to face one of those difficult times in life and you're afraid to face it? I'm here to tell you that God's right there for you if you want Him, if you ask Him, if you pray. This next little story that I'll read you, it's a little longer segment, but this is from my third book, Misled. And in this little story segment here, this little section, there's a boy named Tyree, and he is scared to death of a certain assassin that's in town. Now, I won't tell you the whole story, but Agent John Knox, who happens to be my favorite character, John Knox helps the boy understand where he can go when he's afraid. So I'll pick it up from there. Mr. Willingham waved bye to Tara and assumed an apparent usual spot in the lazy boy in front of the TV in the living room. John took off his sports coat, revealing his sidearm hanging in the holster under his arm. He hung the coat up on a hanger on the wall near the front door and turned around to find Tyree staring up at him with a big grin. "You came! I knew you would. Mom said you were coming to keep me company. She also said you might bring something?" Knox laughed at the kid and went back over to his coat. He pulled a somewhat bent and folded baseball cap with gold FBI lettering on the top of the cap. Tyree pushed the inside of the hat out and stretched out the bill of the cap. Then he tried the cap on, and it looked a little big for his head, except for his ears sticking almost straight out. John knocked the bill of the hat down over the kid's nose and laughed some more. "Looks good on you, kid." "So, Tyree," he started as he looked around the apartment, "what do you want to do tonight?" Mr. Willingham spoke up. "Mr. John, you and Tyree don't mind me. I like sitting here and watching my programs just fine. You guys have at it with those newfangled video games he plays." Tyree added with excitement, "Well, Agent John, I was watching Power Rangers. It's the first season on DVD. The Red Ranger, Jason, he's my favorite. Who's your favorite Power Ranger, Agent John?" "Tyree, you can just call me John. But thanks for being so polite. You know, it's been years since I watched that show, but I think I like Jason, too. He's the one that turned into a red dinosaur robot, right?" John asked. "Something like that," Tyree chuckled. "Well, all right then, Tyree. Let's watch some Power Rangers." So the two walked back to Tyree's room and picked two separate beanbags in front of the 40-inch flat screen in his room. He worked the TV remote like a pro as he set up the DVD to play, and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers music began to play on the screen. Knox was flashed back to his mornings before school when his kid brothers would watch a little TV before getting ready, and the Power Rangers were on. He sure was spending a lot of his time on memory lane lately. While they sat there and watched the costumed villains attempt to take on the Power Rangers, outmatched and out-choreographed, Knox had found a junior-sized Nerf Turbo football and tossed it back and forth across the bedroom with his new short friend. "Agent John, John, do you ever have nightmares?" "I sure do. As a matter of fact, I had some bad dreams with this Klansman that you saw started appearing on the news." Tyree's eyes opened wider. "You have dreams about this Klansman too?" he asked his temporary babysitter. "Well, not exactly, but I had dreams about a similar group of men that wore white hoods, just like the man you saw, that killed those people in their cars." "There's more than one man in a white hood?" Tyree asked in great consternation. "Well, there's only one killer like the man you've seen. No, these men were scary fellows I saw when I was just a little older than you. A long time ago. They won't be bothering anyone anymore." "Did you have bad dreams about them when you were a kid my age?" Tyree asked. "As a matter of fact, I did. And I still got a little scared for a while when I would see movies about those men in the white hoods. All the way up until I was about 15 years old. But I was used to some of those scary dreams by then." Tyree was impressed with Agent Knox. He had looked up to the man ever since he saw him the first time he and Malik had visited the apartment. He was even in awe of the two FBI men when he had seen them at that first crime scene before he cut and run on them. He wanted to know what made men like Agent Knox and his partner so brave. "So, John, what did you do to stop having the nightmares?" John had been thinking of what to tell Tyree. He knew this question would come. "Well, Tyree, my dad was a preacher, and he told me about a certain verse in the Bible." Tyree interrupted. "John, my grandpa, my mean dad's dad, he is a preacher too. He's the one who told us to get away from his son, because he was so mean to me and Mom." John raised his eyebrows. That would have to be a story for later, probably told by Tara. "Anyway, Tyree, he told me about Psalms 23 in the Bible. Do you know what it says?" Tyree answered, "Mom and I read the Bible at Christmas sometimes, but I don't know if I've heard that or not. The Bible's a big book." Knox smiled at the innocence in the boy. Then he recited the verse from Psalms 23 from memory. "Tyree, Psalms 23 was written by a king named David. David was a shepherd when he was young, so he knew a thing or two about shepherding a flock. And this is what he said. 'The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me by still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So you see, Tyree, the Bible tells us that God is our shepherd, and he protects us from evil, just like a shepherd would protect his flock of sheep. Tyree sat on the edge of the bed that was almost too high for him. It was the first time Knox noticed he was pretty small for a 10-year-old. He kicked his legs back and forth a couple of times, then spoke up again. I get that, but what does all that other stuff mean, John? Ha! I had a feeling you'd ask that too. Well, it kind of means the same as the other thing that my dad used to tell me. Tyree, do you know who Jesus is? The 10-year-old boy looked up in the corner of the room for a second. Well, I know he was supposed to be God's son. I learned that at my grandparents' church. But there was something else special about him. Oh, yeah. He was supposed to be dead, but came back to life. Is that what you're talking about? That's right, Tyree. Jesus died on the cross for all of us. For you, for me, for Malik, anyone who chooses to believe. But the fact that he came back to life, that was God already conquering evil. So you see, Tyree, there's no reason to keep fearing this Klansman guy. Sure, he's scary, and would be even scarier if you ran into him. But it doesn't matter. God has already won. He beat all evil when Jesus came back to life after dying on a cross. So take this, he was saying as he unwrapped a small extra present he had kept in his front pocket. He stood up to give the small gift to his host. Take this and read it every night. It should help you whenever you're scared. Tyree looked down at the small book. It wasn't a whole Bible, but it was meant to be the most comforting words from the Bible, the books of Psalms and Proverbs, and the entire New Testament. It was in a green, fake leather binding and cover, and had gold lettering on the outside. Tyree got a little excited just because John had given him another surprise. Then he jumped off the bed and wrapped Big John Knox's legs in a tight bear hug. John, thank you so much for my presents. Then the small framed kid jumped back on the bed and Knox sat beside him once again. Mr. John, I have another question, the rambunctious boy started again. Sure, fire away. John let the Mr. title slide this time. If God is the shepherd protecting us all from evil, what does that make people like you and your partner and the police outside my apartment? John hadn't thought about that, but he went with an old law enforcement adage. Tyree, we're the sheepdogs. When shepherds have to wander further away to chase after a lamb or sheep that wanders off, he sometimes leaves a sheepdog behind to protect the other sheep from the wolves. That's us, Tyree. See, Jesus left us after he died and came back. He left us for a time to be in heaven. So sheepdogs like us are still here to watch over you and to be the peacemakers. But do you know what else the Bible tells us? What? The boy asked with intense curiosity. He said that he will come back one day. That's good news, right? Tyree nodded. He seemed content with John's answers, then he changed the subject. The next 45 minutes or so, the two of them watched Power Rangers. Then John told the boy he would catch up with him again soon, and he patted him on his almost bald head and said good night. He bade Mr. Willingham farewell, and then Agent John Knox left Tyree with his neighbor, Mr. Willingham. He told Tyree before he left that whenever he was afraid at night, to just open his new mini-Bible to the page Knox had marked and read the words highlighted in yellow. He told Tyree to read those words over and over until he got sleepy. So later in the evening, when restless Tyree was finally tired, he started to close his eyes, but he began to see the Klansman's face once again. He flipped on his nightlight and opened the book John had given him. He read Psalms 23. When he finished, he read it again, and again, and again. Finally, the young boy went to sleep, and little Tyree slept soundly for the first time in days. Well, that's all of that little segment of Misled. That's actually my favorite novel that I've written so far. I have a special connection to Tyree, the character of Tyree, because of my days as an elementary PE teacher. But think about things from that little boy's perspective. And when you're afraid, when you're scared, go to the Lord. You know, these end times we seem to be living in, if they scare you, you know what? Find comfort in God. He's there for you. He's that light in the darkness. I'm always here to remind you that we live in a dark world. But keep looking for that light. You'll find it. It's there. And then just keep going towards it. We're going to take one more break, and then I'll have some closing words when we return.
Crikey, did you see the size of that croc? Oh, never mind. I don't even care about crocodiles anymore. What I came to talk to you about was this new author. Have you heard of him? Jason E. Fort. That's his name. And if you go to his website, www.jason-e-fort.com, you might see the titles of his novels right there. And you can read his novels and you can hear about all the kind of things, well, you can read about all the kind of things you've been hearing about on the radio. There's Misguided, that's his first novel. Second novel's called Mistaken. Third novel's called Misled. The fourth novel goes in a different direction, and it's called Tracking Game. That's kind of what I do every day. And then the fifth novel is called Dead Memories. Now, Dead Memories is his latest novel, and I think it's a great read. I've read all his novels, by the way. Yeah, when you're not chasing crocodiles, sometimes you got time to read. Anyway, what I was trying to say is go to his website. You can check out his novels. You can check out what he's up to, all the events, book signings, all that kind of mess. You can even read his blog posts. And you can hear a lot about that, you know, on his Friday shows right here on KDOV. Anyway, that's all from Steve-O. But anyway, you guys have a good day. Well, we've talked about a bunch of different things tonight, haven't we? I guess it wasn't too bad, considering I didn't have a guest on tonight's show. I will have a surprise guest next week on next Friday's show. But I enjoyed tonight. Try to just go back and, you know, if you need to listen again, you can always tune in on YouTube. But tune in right here on KDOV, and we will tackle more issues, such as, you know, vengeance, fear, regrets, different things like that. All of those things that you encounter in the darkness out there. And so tune in next time, and we will have some fun delving into really just how bright the light of Jesus is. Until next time, this is The Fortress.